Hello and welcome to all my friends out there in YouTube land. I'm Dakian. This is Monday the 22nd of August 2016, and here we have a slew of skeletons that I painted up. It's the remainder of that Kickstarter for Dungeon Monsters, which was zombies and skeletons. You can see the row from the orc to the goblin to the human archer to the human sort of female warrior to the rat man, the dwarf, the halfling, and the lizard man out there in the end. Oops, the orcs fell off. Now, these are of course rough paint jobs. The as before, that I think because they're undead, they've been in the ground long, they should look dirty and distressed. And I can turn this around maybe and show you the back view of some of them. And the only real problem I had with them was that the sculpts, these female warriors, Dead Sonia as they're called, which is why I painted the red hair for Red Sonia. The hilts of the swords broke off on both of them, which, because the way they were cast, it was just really too thin a connection. And I would say this was a problem either with the sculpting or with the molding process. It's just a technical issue with how these were made. There was really nothing I could have done to prevent that, and you can't really reattach such a small part of the model. But I said to myself, I'm not going to worry about it because they're undead, they're ancient skeletons, and their weapons and armor are probably not fully whole. You know, if pieces are broken off, yeah, that's, you gotta count on that happening with the undead. And again, as with the, it's kind of interesting. Just with this, as with the zombies, the human ones are the ones I'm least satisfied with. These rangers, these archers, kind of boring. The monsters, like the goblins and orcs and whatnot, are much more interesting looking in the sculpts. And the dwarf is pretty nice. I think I got the faded cloth of the cloak down in a pretty good way there. Yeah. Anyway, so did I finish anything else this week? Yes, as a matter of fact, I did. Let's take a look at that. Why, yes, I did in fact finish painting a couple more things. I did the armor rack from this set with the armor rack and lectern. The lectern is not finished yet. For the armor rack, I painted pretty much the same way, except this device. Now, heraldically, I believe that's a lion rampant. I can't freehand that, so I instead did a much simpler device. I just did an arrow pointing kind of in the same direction that the lion is rearing in their version. I thought that would be interesting. And of course, being that these are Frostgrave intended minis, I always did do snow on the basis. Now the Banshee had no studio paint job to reference, and looking in the monster manual for 5th edition D&D, they've illustrated the Banshee in just white and gray. It's a pure white thing with being with gray shadows. And that was majorly boring. I cannot paint a miniature that way. That would just suck. Too bad. But I still went with really white colors and well, pale colors and white highlights, pure white highlights. And maybe the skin color and the hair color turned out a bit similar, but that's okay. It's a ghostly being. you know, it just has to have a little touch of color. It doesn't need to be really, really impressive. Maybe I could have. It's unclear whether the folds in the cloth here are actually part of the dress that she's grabbing and holding with that hand, or if it's a separate piece of cloth, like a handkerchief or something that she's holding. I perhaps could have painted that a slightly different color in hindsight, but no big deal. I think it's okay the way it is. So, what am I working on?
Here we see my currently in the works batch of stuff. You can see it's mostly just primed, and yeah, I've started a little bit on these guys in the back. Now, these are mostly the North Star minis, and for, let's see, for the lectern here, they've done an interesting thing. They've done a sort of marble effect here in the studio paint job, and it's not started yet, but I thought I'd challenge myself and try to accomplish something like that, because yeah, it's interesting. I think I sort of know the theory behind how to do it, but I need to practice it some more. Now, for the rest of these North Star guys, unfortunately, the studio paint jobs are really boring. I'm not saying they're bad. They're skilled, but it's just black on black, and these guys are gray, a tiny bit of dark purple, a little bit of white there maybe, and these are just black. I felt the need to sort of brighten it up a little bit, and I've started that by doing the armor here in a kind of coppery color. It still needs to be shaded a bit, but yeah. Oh, and this guy, really nothing done on him yet. The inner lining of the cloak, but oh well. Yeah, but this is a reasonable amount of stuff to get done until next week, I think. So, yeah.
And let's do a little unboxing of the next miniatures in line to be prepped, painted. Mostly I'm going to focus for next week on Heresy miniatures. Here we have the simplest of the lot. I think it's called the Wraith King, which is simply an armored wraith. It's a one-piece model, kind of flat pose. Maybe I can bend the arms a little bit to make it more three-dimensional. We'll see. And yeah, not much to say about him. This here is a witch, which is a more complex model. The theme for the rest of these Heresy miniatures is going to be that they're all multi-part, and they have a lot of options. Not so much options in this case. We have the broom she's holding in one hand. We have the head with the classical pointy chin and nose and hat. And we have a cauldron where she's boiling something with a hand that's trying to get out. And this might be an option. I wondered first, is this a tree stump she's standing on or something? No, but it's a fire. It's a fire for this to rest on. Or we have these 3 clawed feet that I assume are supposed to be attached to the cauldron, and it seems on the face of it difficult to use both, to both have a cauldron standing on feet and resting on the fire. I'll probably have to choose. We'll see how that goes. Let's take this out of the way. This guy, I believe, is called the Ghoul King, and it's, as you can see here, it's a body, no head, no hands. There's a like a victim or just a servant, another ghoul or something for the base in some way. We have his two arms, one holding a giant bone, piece of it's like a piece of a leg bone from a giant creature, and the other holding a shovel, a spade. And it's both of these have actually both the arm and the hand on them. So it's an option. Either he's holding the shovel, something like this, swinging it, or same pose but with a big bone. I get it. Again, I'm going to have to choose. And I'm also going to have to choose between these two heads. It's not an amazing amount of difference. One has hair, the other doesn't. I'll look more closely at them later, but if the hair is the only difference, I'll go with the one with hair because more stuff to paint, more interesting. This is supposed to be a necromancer, I believe. Even though he has a tab here, there's also a scenic rock base attachment comes with. He has a choice of two right arms with extremely little difference between them. I can't really tell if there's any difference. Here is a kind of a skull goblet. Could be holding, and this is a bird. I don't know, it kind of looks like a vulture, which I assume he's holding up. Oh right, the goblet has his left hand on it as well, so that always goes on there like that. Then you can choose which of the two right arms, and you attach the bird to it. I suppose he's holding it like a falconer. That's the only way it makes sense to me. But again, I don't see the difference between these two arms. One of them is sculpted, perhaps in a more skeletal way, more withered. But that also looks weaker because there's less metal in this mid portion. So, kind of leery of that. I'll probably go with the more full arm. And finally from Heresy we have a flesh golem who comes again with, for some reason, one left arm and a choice of two right arms. Both are bald fist. One is more bent than the other. That's the only difference I can see. One is more stretched out. I'll probably use that one because that's more interesting if it's more away from the body, more three-dimensional. And we have a choice of three heads. Now let's see, they're all kind of Frankenstein-y. They all have these rivets in them. One of them is just a bald head, one has an exposed brain, and the third has some hair on it. That's the difference, if you'll see. I'm not sure. I'll have to think about that. The exposed brain might be fun. Oh well. Anyway, that's just 5 models. Even though some of them are really complex and time-consuming to paint, I thought I'd add some more stuff to the queue. So I picked out a few things. I have a big box of miniatures from Dark Sword Miniatures that I haven't gotten around to anytime. The most generic fantasy thing there is this dire wolf, who's supposed to be Ghost from you know, Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones. And I think I'll paint him up that way, as a white wolf, as a winter wolf of some sort. And finally, this is a GW mini from the Lord of the Rings strategy battle game line. This is the only miniature I own from the Lord of the Rings or Hobbit lines. And I'm not sure why I picked it up. I think it was simply because it was on sale for dirt cheap at some point, and I thought it looked generic enough. It's a Rider of the Dead, so it's some sort of undead horseman. Which is not specific to Lord of the Rings. This is a general fantasy trope. So, why not take a crack at this guy? So, as you see, quite a lot of projects on my table for next week. For today's outro, I want to show you what arrived this week. I picked up some more of the D&D Collector Series minis from Gale Force 9. As I mentioned, I stopped buying directly from Gale Force 9. These come from another retailer. And the first box is Creatures of Icewind Dale, which is, interestingly enough, an ice troll and a yeti, which this order took a really long time to arrive, and I originally thought I was going to use them as sort of snow trolls for Frostgrave. In the meantime, I've actually painted other minis that resemble these quite a lot. If you recall, I painted a Yeti from Heresy Miniatures, which looks sort of like this, and a troll from Reaper, which kind of a little bit look like this. Except they were bigger. I've looked inside the pack, and these miniatures are not that huge. These pictures, as it says 100%, these are actual scale. So they're not super big. But anyway, yeah. And then I picked up some packs that I don't have any immediate use for, but from the Collector Series Classic series, they have some packs that are based on classic D&D modules. This one is the Tomb of Horrors. Now, there are practically no monsters in the Tomb of Horrors. If you've ever played or read the Tomb of Horrors, you know that it's mostly traps. But there is the Lich, Asarerak. Now, in this cover art actually doesn't show him in the form you normally encounter him. He's normally a Demi-Lich, which is a floating skull like this one. This miniature is kind of him reimagined as a full Lich. Here's, by the way, the old cover of the module. And to fill this box set out, they made 3 miniatures of adventurers. But that's cool. You know, I can always use some adventurer minis as well. Why not? And they show you painted. They show you one of them unpainted and all of them painted. And finally, another box set, which is the Scourge of Sutterham. These are the 5 slave lords which appear on the cover of this module called the Eyrie of the Slave Lords. If your eyes are sharp, you'll see that they've kind of replicated that cover art in these paint jobs. So, yeah. I'll have to try to do the same once I get around to these guys. And, you know, I'm just picking them up in case they run out, because, hey, they're limited edition. Only 1,500 sets ever made. And I don't think or I might have mentioned this before, but I sometimes wonder about this strategy from Gale Force 9. I mean, how many miniatures manufacturers, apart from GW, actually make more than 1,500 copies of any one model in their range? I'm willing to say it's probably not that many. Most companies maybe sell a few hundred copies of each. So, I mean, saying 1,500, it's not that limited. It's not ultra rare, you know. It should be possible to get hold of a copy. But just to be safe, you know, I will occasionally pick up one of these sets and store it away for future use, you know. So the marketing is working on me to a certain extent. I'm not thinking, oh, I can wait forever to buy these. I'm thinking, well, I'll probably try to pick up the ones I want sooner rather than later. Anyway, these two boxes are definitely pretty far in the future. I mean, the only reason to ever paint up this set would be if I were to try to play the A series of modules, which I have no immediate plans for. And same here. I mean, no, the adventuring guys, these three guys, I could paint up just to have as player characters. But the Lich himself, maybe if I repurpose some other dungeon and put a Lich in it, or you know, or a Demi-Lich for that matter. But these guys, though, I might... these might be put in the queue sometime before the end of the year, perhaps, even. We'll see. Anyway, that's what I had for you today. Thank you for watching. I hope it was entertaining. Please leave a comment if you care to. Like the video. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. And I will see you next week. Dakian, signing off.